I thought I would send you more, as we said. I hope this format works, and I hope this is helpful. I'm really happy to do it because it's very therapeutic for me to be able to explain things. So I thought I would tell you today about how EHS affects your personal relationships, like your friendships, because it's a really big part of it, because you are kind of isolated enough just by having this condition, and then the mental aspect of the mental problems that you get from it often sabotage like the few friendships that you can have. So it's really tragic. It's really tragic. Like it just leaves you more and more alone, and it's just because people don't really understand what this is like, basically. So I'll give you some examples of when that has happened. So when I have an EHS breakdown, it's a combination of physical symptoms, but also mental symptoms, and that's kind of the worst part. Well, both are bad, but the mental aspect is really bad. So, for example, say that I'm feeling quite okay, but for some reason I have to go somewhere that's more EMF polluted, and I start feeling bad and I have an EHS breakdown. I just invented that expression. So I start feeling bad. I will start having pain in my body, like head pain and stomach pain and brain fog. But I will also start being unable to think clearly. And also my emotions will go crazy. So I will start having feelings of panic, paranoia, sometimes very depressed feelings, or very angry, or sometimes suicidal, just things that don't make any sense, but they're usually really dark, really heavy, just really dark emotions that don't make any sense. And it's kind of like if somebody had drugged you against your will. Like you feel like you're just going crazy, and it's terrifying. You feel really scared because you're trying to feel normal for 1 second, and you can't. You just have this craziness going on, like your mind is firing thoughts that don't make any sense at you, and you're going down a spiral of panic and fear. It's really awful. Like you feel scared. And so, most of us don't really, most of us have given up on meeting people for the most part, but we're still human. So now and then it's maybe now and then you try to meet a friend or a relative or something because you need that. And so I'll give you some examples of when I had some of these breakdowns when I was with people. So for example, once I was with my dad. I tried to meet him in a seaside town and spend some days in a mini holiday for the first time in a long time, because I was living such a hermit life because of EHS. And so I met him, and I was doing more or less fine, had some issues, but more or less fine. And then he wanted to go to another town because I had to do some official paperwork for some stuff. So we got in the car to go to this other town. And as we got in the car, I said to him, I think we shouldn't go. I'm starting to feel bad. And he was like, oh, but we really need to do this. It's been a long time and we need to do this paperwork. And I said, but can we do it another time or something? I'm starting to feel really bad. And he said, no, we have to go. It's just a moment. Let's go. And so I started to have a breakdown then. I started to feel really bad. I started, like, my judgment just clouded. I didn't know where I was. And I started crying. I started panicking because I felt so weird and so scared. I had all of these just horrible feelings going through me. I didn't even know where I was anymore. And so I started crying in the car. And my dad started saying, "Why are you crying? It's just a moment. We have to go there." And, he didn't understand that that's what was happening to me. He thought I was reacting like that because of something in the quote, quote, normal situation that I was crying because I didn't want to go do the paperwork or something like that. Which is kind of ridiculous. But people always do that. They think that you are... Well, I don't know why, but whenever I've had one of these horrible, terrifying breakdowns in front of someone, they've always gotten angry at me. And so you're having this thing that you're feeling completely terrified. It's the worst thing in the world. And on top of that, there's someone that's getting angry at you that is usually a close friend or relative. And it's the most horrible thing. Like, you feel so desperate. And so alone. It's like, how can it be this horrible? At that moment, it's the worst thing in the world. Because you're kind of... Like, the one thing that you would like at that moment is for someone to just tell you it's going to be okay, even though you're absolutely terrified right now. But they're getting angry at you, and they just get angrier and angrier, and you can't find the words to tell them what's happening. Like, you can't even do that. It's just so horrible. And it seems really silly. Like, I know that when I explain this, you think, oh, well, I wouldn't react like that. I would see that something is happening to you and just wait for you to get well or something like that. But somehow, when you have one of these breakdowns, I think it's because you put out such weird energy. You put out such a weird vibe because you're having all of these really dark feelings. And the person doesn't understand that something medical, you're having some medical trouble or some mental trouble. They always think that you're reacting like that to something that they said or something to do with the normal side of the situation. And they try to, like, force you out of that by shouting at you. Or, they try to, like, talk you out of it in a logic way, and they start getting angry and angry at you. And it's just horrible. It's just so horrible, And the thing is as well, it can actually cause breakups between people. Like, it causes a real break in the relationship, It has sabotaged my friendship several times. Somehow. Like, even if you tell them later, like afterwards, well later when you're well, that I'm sorry, I was having an EHS breakdown, somehow that harm is already done. Like, people interpret that as if you were having, a real reaction to what they were saying. Like, the breakdown has the power to create that much harm in relationships. And it's just too much, like, it's so much. The experience itself is so traumatic for you. And then on top of that, it breaks your friendships and your relationships. It's just so horrible. And this has happened quite a few times, unfortunately. It happened with a boyfriend I had. I tried to be in a relationship while being EHS, which is difficult. But the same thing happened. We were having a conversation, and suddenly I just had a breakdown, and he did exactly the same thing. He started getting angry at me and going, well, why are you upset? And I was just like, I'm sorry, I just don't feel well. Can you not see? I just don't feel well. And he just kept getting angrier at me and trying to talk me out of it, or rather shout me out of it. And it was just horrible. Like, my memory of that is one of the most horrible things, you know, to be like in some kind of psychedelic torture, and then on top of that, someone that's important to you getting angry at you instead of offering support is just horrible. It's so horrible. Because you really are scared, you know, like you really are scared. You go to some really, really dark places when these breakdowns are happening. It's kind of like your brain goes crazy and it activates your worst fears. So you think that you're dying. You have dark hallucinations. You see dark things, like, you know, dark beings. You feel like you're falling into a black hole. It's just horrifying. So imagine having that, and then on top of that, someone shouting at you, getting angry at you. It's like, wow, get me out of here. Yeah. And for example, another example, I was in a project recently. I was doing a project with a friend, and it was a good friend. We had a really nice, just a good friend, someone I have a lot in common with, a really nice friendship. And again, I had an EHS breakdown type of thing, which lasted quite long. And so the way I communicated became a bit weird. Not that I said anything wrong. I still did what I had to do. You know, I could do the things that were required of me for the project. But again, the energy that I was putting out because of my breakdown was weird, and the way I communicated was a bit weird. And so this friendship stopped. You know, this person stopped being friendly to me. I have no idea how he interpreted what was happening. He doesn't know I was having a breakdown, because I was so terrified when I was having it that I couldn't even say it. And now we are not friends anymore. So, you know, it sounds kind of simple from the outside, but it's a horrible thing. And it feels so unfair and so painful that your friendships and your people disappear because of this thing, which is horrible enough by itself, you know. And sometimes you explain it, but people don't seem to get it. They don't seem to really understand that was not you. They just don't somehow. I guess, you know, everybody projects their own stuff and interprets things in their own way. But yeah, it's a really painful thing, you know, because you are isolated enough because of this condition. And then the few people that you have, they start falling away. And